my today's major focus would be on the how to crack the mathematics of the aptitude examination. Obviously, I'm not a mathematician per se to tell you all the mathematical fundas or mathematical proofs and so on. But my major focus would be on how to tackle the aptitude test examination, and that is that in it itself is a wonderful thing. Okay, those who consider themselves above average and those who do not want to write any aptitude examination, I think you are also going to enjoy the session because I've added quite a good things in it. Now, before we go ahead, let's let me talk about this. Why am I qualified to talk about this session? Why am I qualified to talk about mathematics as it? Because very honestly, guys, I started understanding the mathematics after I completed my graduation, and there is no exaggeration here. I started understanding the things in mathematics or quantitative aptitude after I completed graduation, not in 10th, not in 12th. After that, yes, I cracked the examination, I passed the examination, I got by my standard, I got good 12th ka percentage as well, I got good 10th ka percentage as well. So I think that yes, I was good enough to crack the examination, but as long as the understanding was concerned. So if you come to in the past, if you meet me when I was in 12th and you ask me what is the factorial thing, what is this factorial? Factorial is generally written as the exclamation mark. What is that? I would probably not, I would not have been able to answer that question. So the logic is I did not understand mathematics till that date. I completed graduation, I started preparing for the aptitude examination, and then I realized what all things did I miss when I was completing my 12th. So what qualifies me? Number one, I am from the commerce background. So any mathematics, any quantitative aptitude that I have learned till the date is self-taught. Self-taught things are wonderful from the perspective that they give you the actual logic, no formulas, no theorems, no proofs. They give you actual logic behind the thing. So I'm pretty sure when I started understanding how do you measure the area of a circle, or probably how do you measure the area of a sphere, I got into a lot of detailing. I found out what Newton did with it, what the other mathematician did with that. So I have a commerce background. I do not have a mathematics background as such, but the things that I have learned over the period of time are self-taught. So I think that makes me a little more on the grounds of logical explanation than the mathematical or the formula-wise application. Similarly, as long as my performance is concerned in ZAT20, I scored 99.22%. Now I'm not using CAT-CA score here, I'm using ZAT-CA score. Reason being, ZAT is tougher than, on quite a good aspect, ZAT is tougher than CAT per se. I've also scored CAT में 99 plus percentile in almost all the examination that I take. I score 99 percentile, but I'm highlighting ZAT because ZAT is the toughest one, and ZAT20 because it was the latest one. Okay, and I also have been mentoring students for last 10 years, so I have understood the things in and out. I've probably understood the psychology of the students from the very different spectrums. I have mentored students who have not studied mathematics or they are studying mathematics after the gap of 7 years. I've also taught students who have studied mathematics throughout from the first standard till the graduation, the engineers to be precise. And they are very good with mathematics as long as this aptitude test is concerned. So yes, that again gives me a good edge of taking the session on this. Now, before we go ahead on this, I was talking to one of my students. He met me yesterday. He's a brilliant guy, not in mathematics. He's a brilliant guy, absolutely not in mathematics. He was, when he took the admission with me for CAT-CA preparation, from the very first day, I have been very fond of him and he has been very fond of me. Reason being, he's a very jolly good person, very jolly good person. Generally, you have seen that somebody who is a very jolly good person, generally not good with mathematics. So, mathematics वाले बंदे हमको दिखते भी ऐसे हैं that they are very serious, चश्मा वश्मा पहना है, बहुत serious है, they are sitting in the corner and studying mathematics. That has been our stereotype for that matter, as long as mathematics people is concerned. This guy was absolutely opposite of it. He was very jolly good. Whenever he used to come to the center, I would be very happy because he used to talk like he was a Punjabi guy, and Punjabi guys are very fluent in talking. बहुत मजा आता उनके साथ बात करने में. So when I started talking to him, वो बहुत loosely आराम से बात करता है. I started liking him. His name is Aditya Mumta Sharma. You can go and check on Facebook as well. Very cool guy. Very cool guy. He was the Bhopal rank 1 in CMAT examination, and by most chances he is the rank 1 in MP as well. The guy who did not even understand mathematics, basics of mathematics, or probably he would understand, but the application part was very difficult for him. He could get the rank 1 in MP by most chances. MP rank 1 in CMAT. And I'll show his scorecard as well. You would be glad. Now, when he started writing mocks, when he started taking tests for the purpose of the examination, in the first mock he scored 2 marks out of 300. I'm giving you a second to assimilate this idea. He scored 2 marks out of 300 marks in CAT in the first mock. Till probably 6th mock, his average score was around 22. So he wasn't doing really well. But when he started writing the subsequent mocks, he started getting 100 plus in the test, and eventually he became the rank 1 in CMAT. And his score was by far phenomenal score. In fact, if I share the scorecard of him, you can see this. He has got 91 out of 100 in the CMAT 2019. He also got 85 in logical reasoning, 85 in English, 73 in GK. Everywhere 99 percentile except logical reasoning, overall 99.85 percentile. Brilliant score, especially for a person who did not, and his all India rank, observe that the last line, all India rank is 84. For the person who was not at all very good with mathematics. And the way I mentored him, one thing I learned from him was that never lose hope. He was so jolly good that टेस्ट का खराब भी स्कोर आया, हाँ सर कर लेंगे ना, देख लेंगे आगे वाले टेस्ट में देखेंगे, इसमें ये गड़बड़ हुआ था, I found out the errors and this is the analysis, probably in the next test I'll be doing well. That day, till the day of writing CAT, I did not, very honestly as a mentor, there is always a doubt in your mind that, okay, what will he do if he doesn't find the test paper to be really well, or at least for his capacity. So I was in a dilemma, but yes, eventually when his result came out, he was probably the MP or state topper for that matter. So what is that thing that we usually do as a mentor, we do with the students, and what are the reasons students find the mathematics to be difficult? That is what the agenda today is. But before we go ahead, I would like to share some red herrings here, share some points here, that what are we going to discuss and what are we not going to discuss. First of all, the thing that we are going to discuss is why mathematics is supposedly difficult to understand or to study. See this, I have italicized the word supposedly difficult and underlined it. I want you to understand there is some slight slight fun there. I've also added few examples to show you that it isn't. Studying mathematics is not a difficult, especially the aptitude examination of mathematics. It's not difficult. And eventually I'll also be giving you a slight idea about how do we get at least 90 percentile in CAT. And there are methods, there are reasons that I'm sharing. Almost all of you would agree with it, because some or the other way you would have that thing felt in your life. So the first word, let us try to understand the word math phobia. Now I'm not getting into math phobia, I'm getting into phobia. So what is phobia? Phobia is an irrational fear of something. Understand the word or focus on the word irrational. It's not a logical fear. It's just something that you have assumed on yourself or assumed by yourself, or there are people who would have given you that fear without you realizing it. Just for an example, if you know, I just throw an assumption here. When you were a kid in probably 5th or 7th, 6th standard, you started solving the mathematics. There are 4 other people sitting with you. They are also solving and they are getting the answer. You are getting the answer, but late. You are the last person to get the answer. Now, how does it make a difference whether you have got the answer last or not? Actually, it doesn't make a difference. But in the classroom that you are sitting, probably that was considered to be a bad thing. That if you are giving the answer at the last, you are a bad person, or you don't know how mathematics works. That thing probably is the reason you have cultivated the fears, answering in the last. There are 2 major differences. Number 1 is the solving of the question, and number 2 is contest. You are not in contest. You are solving a question. You're not in contest. Contest will come at the end of the preparation when you're writing mocks, or probably in the actual CAT. Contest is not now. Context is never in learning. Learning is the very, very beautiful process. You should not be tainting it by putting the competition in learning. Yes, eventually you will have the contest. I agree with it, but not while learning. Okay. Now, what are the reasons people develop this math phobia, or students develop this math phobia? One of the reason is working memory problem. When I was doing the research about this session long back, when I was preparing this, I was reading this book, Train Your Brain. In that, this was categorically discussed that here there's something called this area of your brain that is called prefrontal cortex. This is one of the reason your brain works. Probably, you understand, you think, you apply logic, you predict something, and so on. That is the prefrontal cortex. If you are afraid of something, you start occupying some memory, some part of this brain, this part, some portion of this part with fear. Means, let's say, for example, that part is 100, 20, 25, 30% is given to the worry wala part, that you are afraid of something. And that is why, guys, you must have realized that whenever you're getting into a difficult situation, it becomes difficult for us to think. Whenever you are afraid, whenever you think you are into a difficult situation, it becomes difficult for us to think. This is the reason that the fear occupies the working memory. So whatever working memory you have, if people understand the computer language, that is called RAM. Okay, RAM, random access memory, that is RAM, working memory. So that creates a problem. So when you start thinking that, okay, I'm afraid of mathematics, you really will be facing difficulty, because a big portion of your brain is occupied in dealing with this problem itself, that you are afraid of something. That is the reason. So what is the solution? Again, eventually we'll come to the solution part at the end of the discussion, but this is one of the reasons. So I would like you to have attention to this, that if you are afraid of that, you are by sure going to have the difficulty in dealing with that. Okay, that is number 1. And let me give one qualification here. I am not a neuroscientist. I do not work with brains. This is my research that that has come to me. That is probably secondary or tertiary research. So I am not sure how true I am, but I found out at a lot of places that working memory is the thing that can get disturbed when you are afraid of something. Okay. The next thing, that we do not deal in the chunks. What we do with the mathematical thing or mathematics is that we start taking everything in one go. We do everything at the entire question consists of 4 to 5 lines. You start assimilating entire information in your brain. See, already that fear part has occupied a part of your brain, a portion of your brain. And on the top of that, you do not deal in chunks. Chunks ka simple matlab hai, you cut the information into few smaller comprehensible part. It's like, if I give the analogy, when you are climbing the Mount Everest, you never climb the Mount Everest. Let me give one very different information. You do not climb the Mount Everest. What you climb is, you go from one base to the second base, you go from second base to the third to fourth to fifth, and so on. These are the bases. Combination of all the bases will be the result, will result in you climbing the Mount Everest. So it is never, do not think that I want to jump to the Mount Everest, because सीधा peak पे नहीं पहुंचोगे आप. You will have to go to from base 1 to 2 to 3 and so on. So if you have a problem from base 1 to 2, you don't tell that, okay, I have a problem climbing the Mount Everest. You tell that I have a problem going from base 1 to base 2. You don't straight away culminate the entire statement that I have a problem climbing the Mount Everest. So that is the logic I would like to apply here, that you have to deal with the information in chunks. Go step by step, understand the first sentence, apply that to the next one, apply that to the next one, and so on. Or sometimes you will have to understand 2 to 3 sentences separately, and then eventually you have to boil them. We will also be taking an example of this to ensure that the entire learning is getting passed on. So don't worry about it. But first understand that you have to think in chunks. Your brain will be able to process it as long as you are thinking in chunks. Take small part, understand it, apply it somewhere else. Take another smaller part, understand it, apply somewhere else. Uh, it's like learning a skill. Learning a skill. So when you start learning, let's say betting for that matter, you do not straight away from the very first day start betting like Sachin Tendulkar or for the time being Virat Kohli. You don't do that. What you do is, any cricketer who is listening to my session would agree that the first thing they teach you in cricket is the grip. Yes, Arpit, thank you for confirmation. The first thing, in fact, I was also a good cricketer when I was playing for Surat, but in Gujarat, I the first thing they taught me was the grip. मैंने बोला, I was probably 17 by then. I thought rather that yeah, मैं पिछले 4-5 साल से क्रिकेट खेल रहा हूँ, I'm by far very good. Why are you teaching me how to hold the bat? I know how to hold the bat. Just ball it and let me, hit for runs, or probably give me a ball. I'll start bowling. And in bowling as well, they teach you how to grip, how to hold the ball. The reason is that small chunk. Once you are taking care of that small chunk, the rest of the process becomes very, very clear. So it's the grip of the bat, first grip of the bat, then the stance, which foot should be first, which should be second one, which one should move when the ball is coming, what if the spin bowling is bowled to you, what if the fast bowling is bowled to you. So all those smaller things, it's not straight away cricket. वो ऐसा सीधा आप पे बैटिंग करो ऐसा नहीं बोल देते हैं. They tell you to have all the parts done very, very carefully. If you have a problem in one part, obviously the rest of the part will also feel the problem. So if you are into analysis of cricket, those who are very good with analysis of cricket, those who are watching IPL, they would know that they have got into the very minute analysis of everything. This batsman against this bowler in that match, if he's playing in the second inning and he's there till the 20th over or till the 15th over, he would have done that, or he generally does that. What are the chances of him not getting out against Jasprit Bumrah and so on? So all this analysis are nothing but a smaller chunks of the bigger part. So if I tell you, was Sachin Tendulkar a good batsman, or is Virat Kohli a good batsman, the answer cannot be yes or no. You will have to ask a better question. That detailing, that small chunk, in what series, sir? Is it one day international test cricket or T20? Okay, if I tell you T20, okay, T20 in what format, or in IPL or probably international T20, what? All these smaller things are supposed to be very fine when dealing with a big problem. So always think that you have to take a smaller part in your brain, process it, understand it, get to the logic of it, and then go to the next part. Let me share that entire thing with a question. Okay. This question was asked in CAT 2017. Okay, I'll give you the entire minute. Just read it. Just read it. Very easily, just read the question. Okay, now if I had been a normal student without understanding of this chunks part, I would have straight away read the entire question. The number of girls appearing for an admission test is twice the number of boys. If 30% of the girls and 45% of the boys get admission, the percentage of candidates who do not get admission it's a lot of detail. First of all, they're telling the comparison between girls and boys. The second one, they're giving the percentage of girls and the percentage of boys. And eventually they're asking, iske alawa kya percentage hai? They are asking who did not get the admission. Now forget everything, forget everything. This question might be little daunting, probably. So what do we do? What do we do? First of all, let us understand in chunks. Okay, this is the best method I have found over the period of time to solve such kind of questions. Let us assume the number of boys is 100. This assumption method is also very important, but let's not get into that. Let's see that number of boys is 100. Now, from the first sentence, the number of girls appearing for an admission test is twice the number of boys. Now I can deal with that. If the number of boys is 100, number of girls has to be 200. Very clear. Now, the first sentence I've already dealt with, the comparison between boys and girls. Brilliant. Now let's see the next statement. 30% of the girls and 45% of the boys get admission. I'm not reading that sentence in this fashion. What I'm doing is 30% of the girls pass the examination. I see that. So 200 ka 30% I have to pass. That is 60. So out of this 200 girls, 60 have passed. And similarly, you can see 45% boys also get the admission. So 100 ka 45% will become 45. Okay. Now, how many have been admitted? What I'm asked is the percentage of candidates who do not get admission is. So first of all, I have to find out how many students got the admission. Fairly simple. The answer is 105. 105 got the admission. We are looking for who did not get the admission. So out of this total 300 students, now logically you should know that 300 kahan se aaya hai, that is 200 girls and up to 100 boys. Out of this 300, 195 did not get the admission. What are we asked? The percentage of candidates who did not get the admission. So out of 300 people, 195 are not getting admission. So 195 is what percentage of 300? Fairly simple. This calculation, 195 divided by 300 into 100. Cancel karoge aap, you will get the answer is 65%. These were the options: 35, 50, 60 and 65. What we did, see, I'm not interested in the answer. I'm not interested in that's why I did not ask you to solve. I did not ask you to give me the answer. We are not interested in that. We are interested in that how did we solve the question. I'm interested in the process. What is the process? First, you take a small chunk, the first sentence. In the second sentence as well, second sentence is a big sentence, but 30% girls passed and then 45% boys passed, got admission. I have separated those two sentences as well because I eventually need to understand what am I supposed to do with that information. If I take everything in, I am baffled. I am baffled. So that's the problem. The first learning we do is that we take the information step by step in chunks. The first learning is start taking information in chunks. The problem with the problem and the solution. Problem that we do not understand information in chunks. Solution, start reading slowly, statement by statement. Okay. One more thing on the same line I would like to explain, that is the Pythagoras theorem. Everybody is aware about it. In fact, you know, by the 5th standard, once a student reaches 5th standard, every student in India is aware about Pythagoras theorem. Very beautiful theorem, no doubt about it. In fact, I remember in 11th or 12th standard, we used to prove that by writing a lot of stuff. And I remember that I used to mug everything up, and in the test paper, I used to write all the proofs and theorems. Pythagoras theorem was one of them. What is the Pythagoras theorem? We know that if this is the triangle ABC, where angle B is supposed to be right angle triangle. I'm not teaching you Pythagoras theorem. I have a bigger purpose. Just see this. So Pythagoras guy proved that AB square plus BC square is equal to AC square. He proved that. Okay, fine. We will accept it. See, I'm not teaching you, or I'm not asking you to go and check the proof of that. There are wonderful, beautiful proofs given on YouTube. You go the proof of Pythagoras theorem. There was one US president as well who found out the proof of Pythagoras theorem. So there are beautiful proofs. If you are interested in doing that, go ahead, but not needed as such, not needed. Now this we know by heart. Means everybody by the 5th standard, everybody knows the Pythagoras theorem. But let us read this question and let us try to see what is my purpose of showing you the Pythagoras theorem. Take a minute, read the question. Okay, so now this question looks like it is nowhere related to Pythagoras theorem. My logic is that again we are studying in chunks. So the first thing, Amit drives at 40 kilometers per hour and Sumit drives at 30 kilometers per hour. Both start from the same point. Amit drives in north and Sumit drives in east. After 2 hours, what is the shortest distance between them? Okay, now let us read. This problem combines two things. One is the time, speed, and distance ka topic. The second one is the Pythagoras theorem. So I'm not going to apply both the things simultaneously and get yourself confused. We'll do one thing. Amit drives 40 kilometers per hour. So let us assume they're starting from this point O. Amit will go up and Sumit will go in the direction of east. Okay, we are asked to check after 2 hours. So if Amit drives at 40 kilometers per hour, in 2 hours he would have covered 80 kilometers. 40 kilometers per hour. Again, this is one very interesting thing to read. 40 kilometers per hour means in 1 hour he'll be driving 40 kilometers. So in 2 hours, straight away double of that, 80 kilometers. So he has covered 80 kilometers here. And similarly, Sumit would have covered 60 kilometers this way. Now let us read the last sentence again after 2 hours. Okay, this is the scenario after 2 hours. What is the shortest distance between them? Now, shortest distance is always the straight line. Shortest distance is the straight line. On the 2D geometry, I'm not talking about 3D geometry. Shortest distance is the straight line. This is we are talking about. So what will happen here? Now I can observe that I have boiled down the entire problem to the Pythagoras theorem. I knew Pythagoras theorem, but what I had to do was I had to boil that down to my liking, my Pythagoras theorem. This entire information was related to the TSD. So if I ask you after reading the question, what is the question about or which question belongs to, your answer probably or very natural answer would be that it is a time, speed and distance question. I would like to disagree with that. This is a Pythagoras theorem question. This is a geometry question. See this, that you have taken some information, you in chunks, 40 kilometers ka 80 ho gaya, 30 ka 60 ho gaya. Okay, this guy is going in north, this guy is going in east. What is the shortest distance? I have taken information in smaller chunks. Now I can easily solve. This is what Pythagoras theorem is. I can apply AC square is equal, that is the hypotenuse square is equal to 80 square plus 60 square, that is 10,000, and AC will be 100. So what is the shortest distance between them? 100. Brilliant. Now observe this. I do not want you to solve it. I don't want you to get into the solution of that. Understand the process. We did not straight away jump to the question. Okay, I know that whenever TSD ka question comes up, we straight away go that distance is equal to speed into time and blah blah blah. We are not supposed to do it here. The logic is different. So smaller chunks is supposed to be the solution for this problem. Do not take everything in at a time. Take smaller piece of information, deal with that first, and then go to the next one apart. So the first point is, I hope, clear. Okay. The second, the first one was the psychological thing, and this is the sociological thing. The mathematics, the way it has been introduced to you, or you have been introduced to math. You know, I remember, as I told you initially as well, I started learning mathematics or understanding quantitative aptitude after I completed graduation. Because before that, everything was okay. This is the theorem, page number 65 of the test paper of the book. You go there, you remember that theorem, come to the exam, write it down, and you get the marks. And I was getting good marks. Few of the times I got 100 out of 100 in mathematics, but I did not understand anything. I did not understand. I remember in 9th standard what happened. Teachers Day hota hai. I hope you guys remember that. I don't know whether they do it now or not, but in school, what used to happen? The student became the teacher and they taught the things in the classroom to the same batchmates. Like, I don't know whether that happens today or not, but it used to happen when I was in 9th. So one of my batchmate became a mathematics teacher and she explained about the circle ka area. I remember in 9th probably that was the square ka area or circle ka area. I was pretty sure that I had studied circle till then. Our teacher taught us the circle and everything. I did not have any idea about it. But the day she taught us there in the classroom to her batchmates, we were her batchmates, I understood, okay, this is what the circle is, this is what radius is called, okay, this is what circumference is called, and everything inside is called an area of that. That was an aha moment for me. Okay, this is what the circle is. All right, all right, all right. And that was in ninth, 9 plus 5. I was by then 14. 14 is a good age to understand what mathematics is. I did not understand anything there. So probably that day I understood circle, and after that, the business as usual. We were back to the schools and normal classes. That 5th September, I doubt I would ever be able to forget, because that day I understand what circle is. Understood what circle is. So the problem that the way we have been introduced to mathematics is not formula. Probably formula is one part of that. It's not theorems, it's not the very abstract formulas and very abstract theorems. It's not like that. The mathematics is more about logic. If your logic is sound, I think you can understand mathematics. If your logic is not sound, it doesn't work that way. Everybody's logic is sound to a certain extent. You just have to hone that. Okay, so I remember that one thing we could understand from few of the question next is, we know what hexagon is. Hexagon is a figure with 6 sides. It has 6 sides. Somewhere I read a formula long back that hexagon area of hexagon, of a regular hexagon, is 6 into root 3 by 4 into side square. Now it's because it is a regular hexagon, all the sides will be equal. Brilliant. Now this formula, very honestly guys, do not generally help. Formulas do not generally help, and especially this formula, I doubt it has helped, out of probably 10 times, it hasn't helped 8 times, probably 2 times it has helped. So 20% of the time this formula has helped me, and I've cracked a lot of examinations, so I have, I think, right to say this. Again, I'm not telling you should not remember the formula. That makes your task easy, but that is not mathematics. That is not mathematics. It's like telling computer that keyboard is a computer. No, keyboard is a part of a computer. Keyboards helps you understand or type in the computer. It is not a big chunk. It is not a big part. So this was the question. Let us read this question in, again, a very great detailed manner. You'll be able to see what I want to prove eventually here. All right. The question is, the midpoints of 4 sides of a regular hexagon are joined to form a rectangle. Find the ratio of the areas of rectangle and the hexagon. Okay, so initially the first thought you should have is, we'll have to draw the hexagon. This is the hexagon and the 4 midpoints of the sides. You can see that these are the midpoints of the side, and if you join all these 4 sides, then and only then you will have rectangle. If you join this wala side with this, you will not have the rectangle. To have a rectangle, you will have to join these 4 sides only. Okay, now what is asked? Find the ratio of the areas of rectangle and the hexagon. Visualize this thing, guys. Visualization here is very, very important. Let's say this is the first area. Can we say this is equal second area? Both the green areas are equal. Everybody is with me. Both the green areas are equal. Fairly simple. No, not a big brainer. Okay. Can we apply the same logic to these 3 areas? The dark green, the lighter green, and the blue. Okay. We can easily see that in the rectangle, all the areas are reflected equally. So it's probably a mirror image there. So what can I say about the area of the rectangle versus the area of hexagon? So if area of rectangle, can we say that area of rectangle is half of the area of hexagon? Because these 2 green areas are equal, these 2 dark green areas are equal, light green areas are equal, and blue areas are also equal. So I can easily see that the ratio here will be 1:2. 1:2, because the rectangle consists the half of the area of the hexagon. Fairly simple. 1:2 is the answer. Now, I hope we are clear with this. A simple visualization problem. Again, I'm not teaching you geometry. I'm teaching you the different logic altogether. the bigger logic, bigger than geometry. Okay, now in here, we haven't applied any geometry formula at all. We haven't applied the formula to find out the hexagon ka area. We haven't done any calculation, guys. We haven't even done any calculation. Forget about applying the formula. We haven't even done the calculation. Reason, we have seen the question in a different manner. So I'm pretty sure if there is a method, if I just be little bad with you for that matter, if I give you, there is one method, you have this is 120 degrees, so you have half of this, so this becomes 60 degree, this is 90 degree, this becomes 30 degree, this becomes again 30 degree. So you can apply the trigonometry here and get the answer to that as well. But that is the stupid way of solving the question. When you visualize this, your problem becomes fairly simple. So the introduction of yours to mathematics could be one of the reasons for you not being very good or you being afraid of it. So one of the reasons that we were not introduced it to it properly. Okay, let's go to the next question. Again, I think you will get my logic that what I'm trying to prove here. Take a minute, read the question. Okay, ABCDEF is a regular hexagon. Angle AGF is a right angle. Okay, what fraction is the red area of the entire hexagon? Okay, so we are supposed to find out what is the fraction of this. Again, with the same logic we can apply. See, again, we are not going to apply the formula. I know the formula to find out the area of a triangle is 1/2 base into height, and the area formula to find out the area of hexagon is 6 into root 3/4 side square. I don't use that, not for at least this question. And this is previous year CAT ka question. As long as I remember, CAT 2003 ka question. Okay. So what will happen? Let's say if this area is 1, this green area will also be 1. Okay, so this triangle, the green plus red triangle, has the area of 2. Similarly, this blue triangle will also have the area of 2. If I draw another triangle that is gray, that will also have the area of 2. So I can see that half of the hexagon has the area of 6. So the bottom half will also have the area of 6. Brilliant. Very clearly I have visualized this situation. Now I've been asked, this red area is what? Red area is 1. The entire hexagon is 12. 6 on the upper side, 6 at the bottom side. 6 plus 6, 12. Out of 12, we have got one part as red. The answer will be 1/12. A simple visualization problem. I haven't even applied any formula. I haven't calculated anything. So I hope you have understood the logic, background logic, that it's the introduction of your to maths probably is causing the problem. So you probably will have to reintroduce yourself to good mathematics, be in touch with good mathematics teacher. And I fortunately I happen to be one, and I happen to have one as very good team member, very good friend. I'm pretty sure you guys are aware about Ankesh sir. So find out one good teacher, and I think IMS Bhopal has 2 good teachers as long as mathematics is concerned. So be in touch with him or her, start solving the question, get yourself reintroduced to mathematics. Okay, that's the second problem and the solution to that. I'll also be giving the other solutions at the end. Okay, one more question, one of my favorite questions. Okay, let us see. What is the question? 8 plus, what is the value of 8 plus 8 divided by 8 plus 1 divided by 8 plus blah, blah, blah. Take it. Now, this question probably falls into the area of quadratic equation. There are people who would ask you to solve this with quadratic equation. I won't. No mentor at IMS Bhopal would ask you to do this. Why? Because we have understood mathematics from a different perspective, very naturally or very deliberately. We have fought with it. what do I do? How do I see this question? First of all, see this bottom wala part, this yellow highlighted part, that is 8 plus 1 divided by something. Can I say that is greater than 8? Because obviously that is 8 plus something. 8 plus something is always greater than 8, unless that something is 0. I think I'm not getting into mathematical here. 8 plus a positive number is always greater than 8. Sorry. Fine. Now, what about this entire red part, red highlighted part? Let us observe, let us see this calculation. If it is 8 by 8, the answer is 1. If it is 8 by 9, the answer is 0.88. Observe that the answer will keep on becoming smaller than 1. If it is 8 by 10, it will be 0.8. So can I say that this red area is less than 1? Because in the bottom, the yellow area that we saw earlier, the answer was greater than 8. So 8 divided by any number greater than 8 will make the answer less than 1. So let's say if it is 9, your answer is 0.88. If it is denomination when there is 10, the answer becomes 0.8. So I know that this red area has the area or has the value less than 1. Very close to 1, I understand, but obviously less than 1. So our answer is 8 plus something slightly less than 1. So can I say the answer is not 9 because I am adding 8 plus something that is less than 1. Okay, so answer would be from 8 to 9, between 8 to 9, not from 8 to 9, between 8 to 9. Because 8 plus something, this 8, let me use the laser point here. This 8 plus entire area, that is 8 plus something, obviously answer is greater than 8. So option 1 is out. Okay, very clearly option 1 is out. Similarly, this entire red area is less than 1. So answer is less than 9. So this is also out. So I'm left with the second and third option. But the third option, you can observe that 8 plus root 8. Root 8 is a very big number. Obviously greater than 1. Observe that root 8 is greater than 1. So this third option ka answer will be greater than 9. And we need something that is slightly higher than 8 but lower than 9. So the answer will be option 2. Again, I'm giving you 10 seconds time to assimilate this. I haven't applied any quadratic equation. I haven't applied any formula for that matter. I just have applied a commonsensical logic, a basic understanding of numbers, basic understanding of fractions. I haven't applied anything else. So the reintroduction, again, I'm reiterating or reinstating that fact that reintroduction to mathematics is very, very necessary. And reintroduction would not mean that you are going back to understanding the numbers, what is odd number, what is even number. That is quite fair. You have already understood that. The reintroduction should be in the form of understanding the basic logic of that. No formula as such required. Okay, what can be the next reason that we haven't liked the mathematics so far? The reason is, one of the reason is the major focus was on memorization of formulas, facts, and so on, rather than understanding. Noshin has a question, but sir, if there is x in place of 8, then equation will be required. No, I doubt, Noshin, because whatever questions I have found till the date of this sort, I've always used the option to find the answer, and I haven't solved the quadratic equation as such. Okay, so in probably few of the cases you have to solve the equation, no doubt about it, equation, but in most of the cases you don't have to. Most of the cases you don't have to. Okay, so the focus has been more on memorization without understanding. So you memorize it. What is Pythagoras theorem? AB square plus BC square is equal to AC square. Okay, what is the formula to find out the area of or the volume of cone? That is 1/3 pi r square h. Okay, what is the formula to find out blah blah blah? So we have the formula remembered of everything. I remember one very interesting fact in 2018 or 19, 18 probably, I was solving this coordinate geometric question. Wonderful question. And I'm pretty sure even if you know all the formulas of coordinate geometry, you won't be able to solve it. That question was not checking whether you know the formula or in coordinate geometry or not. It was sheerly checking your logic, your visualization. That was brilliant question. I could solve it in less than 10 seconds, but that question was very, very good. Very, very good. It did not ask you to see the formula. I'm pretty sure if you Google CAT 2018 ka paper, you would see one coordinate geometry ka question. The answer was probably 8 or 32. Aisa kuch answer tha, but it was wonderful question. Hats off to the person who created that question. So how do we deal with this problem? A lot of memorization has happened, but the understanding is lacking. Let us, let us see one very interesting thing. This is one of my favorite questions. Profit is equal to SP minus CP. Brilliant formula. We have categorized, we have memorized it so long that probably since 5th or 6th standard, we have been doing this. Okay, SP minus CP is profit. And if we inverse that CP minus SP, when CP is higher and SP is lower, CP minus SP is loss. Brilliant. You are correct here. And this is also profit percentage is equal to profit divided by CP into 100. But guys, those who are preparing for CAT, especially, the CAT doesn't do this. CAT doesn't ask questions based on formulas. Not anymore. What do they check is whether you can apply the slight understanding or not. Let me, share one very interesting thing. When I started seeing, my father was a businessman, is a businessman, not was a businessman. My father is a businessman. So when he used to do, we used to have this discussion, profit hua hai and loss hua hai. So I used to think, अच्छा profit का मतलब तो यही होगा कि हमने पैसा जितना लगाया है उससे ज़्यादा मिलना है हमको. So this basic understanding was there, that if you apply some money, you get more than that, you have a profit. You get less than that, you have a loss. I never knew the logic behind putting it in the formula. Profit is equal to SP minus CP. Why do we do that? Because it's the real world is not that simple that you straight away apply the formula and you get the answer. It doesn't work that way. If you want to know more about real world, please go ahead and read a book called How to Not to Be Wrong. How Not to Be Wrong. Brilliant book, brilliant, very, very clear book. The world doesn't run on formulas. World runs on logic. Let me share one very interesting question. Take a minute, read again, apply the first logic, assimilate the information in chunks. Do not straight away take everything in. Just read the question slowly. Okay. The question is, in a market, the price of medium quality mangoes is half that of good mangoes. Good quality mangoes, good mangoes. A shopkeeper buys 80 kg of good mangoes and 40 kg of medium quality mangoes from market and then sells all these at common price, which is 10% less than the price at which he bought the good ones. His overall profit is, okay, this is also CAT ka question, as long as I remember, CAT 2017 ka question, and I've also written the blog on this question. There was some other agenda for that blog using that question, but okay, the question remains the same. These are the options: 8%, 10%, 12%, and 7%. I am pretty sure that even if you know all the formulas of profit and loss ka chapter, this question would not be solved, because it is not asking whether you know the formula or not. It has got a different focus. It has a focus whether you can think logically, whether you can think in the real world scenario or not. So if I have to solve it, what would I do? Fairly simple. I'll go and assume something. Let us say the price of good ones is rupees 10 per kg. So the bad ones or medium ones would be half of that, that is 5 rupees. So 80 rupees, 80 kg good ones, 40 kg bad ones. The good one ka price is 10 rupees, the bad one ka price is 5 rupees. My assumption is so far has been very clear. So the total cost of purchase would be what? 80 into 10, that is 800, plus into 5, that is 200. So 80 kg good one, 40 kg bad one. My total cost will be 1000 rupees. Total cost is 1000 rupees. And he sold everything at 10% less than rupees 10. So he has, why does this rupees 10 come up here? Because he has sold common price which is 10% less than the price at which he bought the good ones. He bought the good ones at 10 rupees. He will be selling everything at 10% lesser than that. That means he'll be selling everything at 9 rupees per kg. And how many kg mangoes does he have as of now? 80 kg good one, 40 kg bad one. He has got 120 kg with him. So 120 kgs sold at 9 rupees. He has got revenue of 1080 rupees, 1080 rupees. Okay, now what is his profit? Profit is 80 rupees. The profit percentage is 80 divided by 1000, because this 1000 rupees was the total investment. 80 rupees divided by 1000, his percentage profit becomes 8%. Percentage profit becomes 8%. Now, you have seen that it's very interesting question solved in probably 4 or 5 lines, but the logic is that the formula that we learned in the previous slide, that is profit is equal to CP minus SP, that is only applied in the last line, and it is not even important. It is not even important that, okay, profit is equal to SP minus CP. It is not important to know, at least for this question, because you are assumed that, okay, 80 rupees is extra, that is supposed to be profit. Formulas would help you only when you have understood them in the very real sense. They won't help you if you haven't understood them, or you have just understood the formula. So you won't be able to use the computer if you know only the typing or you have only the keyboard. You have to have the every assemblage. You have to have everything to work on a computer. Okay. Now there are few people who tell, sir, this question, I think I can solve this question in 5 different methods. So there are students who would tell, sir, we can solve this question with the alligation mixture. Absolutely, yes, you can go ahead and solve it. You might argue, sir, we can solve this question with assuming the price and applying the multiplier as well. Absolutely, you can do it. That was the logic of my blog using this question, that how to get a maximum out of a question. So if you want to know the different methods of solving the same question, you can go and read that blog. Okay. One other reason, probably that is, that is the last reason I'm covering, that we have been lazy. Most of the students, let me tell you very honestly, most of the students who tell that, sir, I don't understand mathematics, are telling sheer out of laziness, sheer laziness. Because in mathematics or quant, what you have to do is you have to do deliberate practice. You have to sit with the question. You have to apply your brain. You have to get boggled down. You have to stop. You have to click on pen. You have to you have to fight with the question. You have to discuss it with somebody. कि यार ये समझ नहीं आ रहा, मैं इसको क्या करूं? ठीक है? We do not do that. Most of the students do not do that, and that's probably where the problem lies. I think my calculation, out of 100, probably 100 people who tell that they are math phobic or they are afraid of maths, 80% would be afraid because they haven't done that mathematics, or they haven't sat with the question, they haven't calculated it, they haven't fought with it, they haven't understood it. So one of the reasons is sheer laziness. My request to you guys is that find out you're not in this case. You're not lazy. You're not lazy, at least for solving the mathematics. So to prove the laziness, let me share you one very interesting question. Again, okay, I have 2 questions. Vijay asked me, sir, tell your blog account name. I'll share it, Vijay. If you go on, as long as I remember, pathan.minhas89 .wordpress.com. That is the name. Or even if you Google it up, the Reader's blog, you will be able to go to my blog, the Reader's blog, THEREADERS blog. Okay. Aradhya says, sir, my net connection went. What was the answer of last question? Last question's answer was 8%, Aradhya. And but I doubt the answer was important there. Important thing was to understand the background thought. So I hope you have understood the background thought. The answer was rather not important. Okay, Ashu's asking, do you give personal maths coaching also? No, Ashu, I happen to be the chief mentor for IMS Bhopal, so I do not give personal coaching as such, but yes, I am chief mentor for IMS Bhopal, so I'm teaching at the institute level. Okay, and at my stage, the personal thing becomes a little difficult because I have to mentor at one day not less than 30-40 students. So individually doing that thing would be almost impractical for me. Anyway, so let us go ahead and laziness ko hatane ke liye what are we supposed to do? We have to work. We have to work. Okay. Give me a second, guys. Give me a second. Okay. So my request to you guys is to find out that you are not falling in this category. You're not plain lazy. You have to work with the question. Now, in the beginning of the session, I told you that we can have 90+ percentile in CAT if we have worked properly on the areas that we have just touched upon. How do we say so? Why do I say so? If you observe this, score versus percentile thing in CAT 2019, obviously CAT 2020 hasn't happened yet, so I don't have that data. But historically, this is probably very close to the actual requirement. So what is that? In QA, just focus on quantitative aptitude. We are not dealing with LR or DI or verbal ability. Quantitative aptitude, if you have to score 90 percentile, your score has to be 34. 34 marks, guys. That means one question in CAT gives you 3 marks. You have to get 11 questions correct. 11 into 3, 33, or probably 12 questions correct. That is, your score will be in the range of 33 to 36. This is from 34 questions wala thing. That is the lengthy paper. 1 घंटे में 34 क्वेश्चन देने हैं आपको, उसमें है this is what the calculation comes to. 11 to 12 questions correct, net correct you have to get 90 percentile. Out of 34, it's not a big deal. And if I give you one more insight, the average number of questions from arithmetic only has been around 14 in 17, 18, and 19 CAT. Around 14 questions are coming from only arithmetic. So if a student comes and tells me, sir, I do not know algebra, will I be able to get 90 percentile? The answer is yes. So in that case, you have to be terrific as long as arithmetic is concerned. Sir, I do not know geometry. Can I get 90 percentile? Yes. Sir, I do not know arithmetic, but I know algebra, number system, modern maths. Can I get 90 percentile? Yes, you can. Eventually, you'll have to score. You will have to get 12 marks correct. Having said that, I am not telling that don't be good with algebra or don't be good with arithmetic or geometry at all. I'm not at all saying that. What I'm saying is you can get to 90 percentile correct if you have worked really very deliberately on things. Now, I have to focus on this deliberation part a lot. Okay, so I hope this slide has served its purpose. 90 percentile is not a big deal. You can get 34 score if you are working relatively deliberately throughout the period. Probably, those who are preparing at IMS Bhopal need not worry. I've already figured that out. We have already figured that out. So let's not worry about that. What are the actionable intelligence from the session that you are going to take? So everything was said by me. Your question should be, sir, what can we do today onwards to get the good result of the session? What do we have to do? So this is what the actionable intelligence means. It's not just a story. मैं यहाँ पे कुछ प्रवचन करने के लिए नहीं बैठा हूँ, मैं यहाँ पे change लाने के लिए बैठा हूँ. That means you have to change after the session. What are the changes I'm expecting? This is the list of that. The first thing, whenever you're solving mathematics or quantitative aptitude or learning for that matter, do meditation at least for 10 minutes. And this is, guys, this is proven method. And I was the biggest opponent of this. I used to think कि क्या बैठ के सांसें लेने से काम जिंदगी में बनता होगा. I had that opinion. कैसे बैठे रहो, थोड़ी डीप सांस लो, काम हो जाता है ऐसे, दिमाग चलने लगता है ऐसे. The answer is yes. Unfortunately or fortunately, answer is yes. at least that worry wala part, that the first part, the working memory problem will be solved. At least it will be toned down, that you won't have to worry a lot about mathematics or quantitative aptitude part. Because if you're doing meditation, you're telling yourself, okay, it is a doable thing. It is the humans, they are the humans who are doing it. So you don't have to worry about. So meditation is very good solution for that psychological pressure you are feeling. Okay. And what do you do in meditation? Nothing very highfalutin thing, nothing highfalutin. Very, very simple. Sit, probably cross-legged, take 7, 8, 10 deep breaths. For probably do it for 10 minutes, and or start counting few things. You would know the result of that. Okay, so let's not do anything extraordinary for meditation. It's just a simple breathing exercise, breathing in and breathing out. Similarly, you have to sit with a target. This is the best thing I can suggest through the entire session. If you have to take one learning out of the entire session, that should be it. You have to sit with a target. You can't sit with an open-ended target that, okay, however much I'll be able to do, I will solve it. It's not a target. It's not a target. And I had a good debate with one of my very, very close person about this, that मुझसे जितना होगा मैं करूंगा. वैसा तो सब करते हैं. If I ask a 5-year-old kid to do something, he'll also tell that, okay, whatever I am able to do, I will do it. Obviously, everybody does it. You have to go beyond that. The point is you have to go beyond that. So you should take a target. The ideal target generally is around 30 questions. Generally around 30 questions. Sit with the target. 30 questions of mathematics, profit and loss, simple interest, compound interest, algebra, whatever. I'll solve 20 to 30 questions. Take a number target, 22 questions or 25 or 30 questions. Without solving them, I won't move. It might take 1 hour, it might take 2 hours, but believe me guys, if you're sitting with the target, you will reach very close to it. And that is what I mean by deliberation. Do not sit with natural understanding ke sir jitna samajh mein aayega hum mathematics kar lenge. Don't do this. That's the biggest disservice you're doing to yourself. Don't sit with open-ended target. Sit with the target. 20 to 30 questions. I'll solve 25 questions today of mathematics ka this topic. Okay. Deliberate target has to be there. Do not sit without the target. That's the second learning. And ask as many relevant doubts as possible. Few of the students, or almost all the students, have this shyness. I don't know where this this shyness is coming from the students, that sir, it might be very silly doubts. Boss, who decided what is silly doubt and what is not? What is that authority that is decided, okay, this is a silly doubt, this is not a silly doubt? What do you mean by silly doubt, first of all? See, mistake is a mistake. Whether it is a doubt, silly or not, it doesn't matter. Mistake is a mistake, silly or not, it does not matter. I'm pretty sure those who are writing CAT 2020 ka mock, some of the questions you are getting wrong because of the silly questions. Or those who are going to write 21 ka CAT, they would 21 or 22, they would see, sir, silly mistakes se mera question galat ho gaya. Boss, CAT doesn't give a damn about that. You have done question wrong. So do not consider any doubt to be silly or not. Forget about that silly point at all. So logic is ask as many doubts as possible. So you might ask a question. You might ask a question, sir. If I have to give you one very interesting question, 9 raised to 32 divided by 10, the answer, remainder ka answer is straight away 1. I can give you 3-4 different methods of solving this question. One of the best method is this in fact was observed when I was discussing the question with one of my students. Sir, we can go ahead with this 9 power. Generally, I used to solve it this way. This is long back in 2010 ki baat kar raha hu. 10 minus 1 divided by 32 divided by 10. Those who have understood the binomial expansion, they would know that minus 1 raised to 32 will be the remainder divided by 10. Effectively, that is 1. Okay, perfect. But effectively, in the discussion, student asked the question, sir, can we do it this way? 9 power 1 is ending in 9. 9 power 2 is ending in 1. 9 power 3, again, that will be 729. So can I say that always the last digit will be either 9, 1, 9, 1, 9, 1, ऐसे चलेगा? ठीक है, correct. So sir, जब भी even power दिख रहा है, last digit is 1. Okay, correct. That means last digit again is nothing but the remainder by 10, because इससे आगे वाले सारे, this is 80 plus 1. So everything will be cancelled, only one will be left. I said yes, correct. So sir, can I apply the logic that whenever I have something ending in 9 and power is even, the last digit will be 1 and remainder will also be 1? Brilliant. That was the doubt of the student. He asked a very small, simple doubt. According to him, it was a very silly doubt. Sir, I'm sorry I'm asking a very silly doubt. It was not a silly doubt. When I started getting into into the mathematics, that was very new for me as well. Okay, so that question, now that learning can be applied to here. 4,000 or this 40,032 divided by 10. What is the remainder? Pretty simple. 1 is the answer. I do not need to bother about much. So I've already applied the logic. So silly or not, forget about that term. No doubt is silly. Ask as many relevant doubts as possible. Why this? Why that? Why this? If mentor tells you, okay, you don't need to be bothered about that doubt. Okay, obviously mentor will have some logic behind that. But ensure that you are asking as many questions as possible to the mentor. That is the next learning. Whenever you are solving a question or asking a doubt, don't be in a hurry. Mentor is not. I can assure you, Ankit sir will not be in a hurry while solving the doubt. Neither would I be. We won't be in a hurry to solve the doubts. Whatever you have, whatever doubts you have, stop, ask very easily. Sir, what about this? What about this? What about this? Acha, you also told this, sir. How can we come to this point? We have brilliant answer to the questions that you can ask. Okay, we have developed a brilliant answer so far. So ask as many doubts as possible. Don't be in a hurry to solve the doubts, and be specific in doubts. Do not straight away come with the face and the logic. Sir, मुझसे profit and loss नहीं बन रहा है. That's not a doubt. That's what that's lamenting. Even worse, that's lamenting. It's just bitching, जिसको बोलते हैं हम बहुत normal language में. It's bitching. Sir, देखो ना quant बनता नहीं. It's not a doubt, guys. It's not a doubt. You have to say, sir, I was solving this question, and in the second solution or second step, I got myself stuck here. Why has that happened? And what is the solution? Or this is my method. Do you have a better method to solve the question? And guys, believe me, almost all the mentors know more than one method to solve the question. And I can see that Ankit sir and I probably would know more than 5 methods to solve a question. I'm sorry if it sounds like a bragging. It is not. We have been doing this thing for a long time, so that comes naturally to us. More than two to three methods at least to solve a particular question. So you have to ask that. Be specific in doubt. Okay, sir, I was doing this and I got stuck here. How can I move further? Or is the method appropriate? Should I change the method altogether? Be very specific in doubts. One more thing, I remember in 2010, probably 9 or 10, I was supposed to take a lecture of functions and graphs. That was the first lecture of functions and graph I took. Now, before that, I ensured that I asked my brother and my mom to sit in front of me, and I explained them the entire graph. I had 2-3 friends as well. उनको मैंने बैठाया, मैंने बोला बैठो, let me teach you the functions in graph का lecture. They sat there for probably half an hour, and whatever I wanted to share, I shared. They understood the logic. Sharing, that day I understood, sharing your logic is very, very important. So you have to find friends. You have to have one family member very close. Okay, let me tell you this question. This is very interesting question. Let me share this question ka solution with you, whether they are able to understand or not. In fact, they'll ask you far better question that you can ask. And teaching is learning, guys. When you're teaching it to somebody, obviously you'll learn it. So ensure that you're finding at least one friend or one family member with whom you can discuss mathematics का concept. It might sound very odd, sir. Family के साथ mathematics थोड़ी discuss करते हैं. जब आपको CAT crack करना हो तो करते हैं. अगर CAT crack नहीं करना है, आज तक जैसे जी रहे थे वैसे जीना है, so obviously you don't do it. And there is one very interesting saying. There are probably very few friends. They will tell you that तो या जब से CAT prepare करने लगा या CAT prepare करने लगी, ये पता नहीं इसको क्या हो गया, ये mathematics हमसे discussion करता है. So the answer to that question is, if you can't change the people around you, please change the people around you. Very, very simple point. Okay, so find out certain number of people who are going to listen to your mathematics discussion or quant discussion. The last suggestion that I'm going to give you is solve and solve. You have to sit with the problem, guys. You have to sit with it. You have to apply your brain. You have to deliberately practice. You can't just be good with mathematics like this. Today, this evening, you are bad at mathematics or quant. Next day, you are good with quant. It doesn't happen that way. It is a long-term process. It's a gradient process. It's a gradual process. Today, you're in a black area. Slowly, gradually, you'll observe yourself into gray one, and after that, probably you'll be in the white area. Don't give up. It is painful process. I'll agree with it. Sometimes you will feel very big pain कि यार नहीं हो रहा है सर, ये वाला टॉपिक तो मुझसे आता ही नहीं है. But ठीक है, go ahead with it. Just do it. Solve. Do not give up.